this edition of RPP News. A record return, bad news for commuters, and a pop choir hits the headlines. Hello, I'm Catie Sharp. Welcome to the latest edition of RPP News, bringing you stories from across Frankston and the Mornington Peninsula. Frankston Mayor Councillor Nathan Conroy has been re-elected for a record-breaking third time, the first person to achieve this in the history of Frankston City. After being elected by his fellow councillors in November 2021 and again in 2022, this will represent his first full 4-year engagement. Mayor Conroy expressed his delight.
And Frankston City, I believe, is the greatest city in Victoria. We are no longer the gateway to anywhere. We are the destination and we are the capital of the Southeast. And Frankston City is finally going to reach our full potential.
The hard-working mayor has attended over 2,000 events, festivals, meetings and briefings on behalf of the city since being elected to the top position. 2 Peninsula police stations are changing their front counter services to night hours only. Hastings and Mornington station counter services will now operate from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Hastings will be open each day of the week, while Mornington services will be from Sunday to Wednesday only. Recent reviews revealed that while the majority of people attend reception counters during the day, the work being done is largely administrative, such as certifying documents. Officers formerly rostered on reception shifts will instead be used for frontline policing duties, such as community patrols, while Victoria Police tries to fill a large number of officer vacancies. The change will take effect from this weekend. Mornington Peninsula Shire Council has expressed its deep disappointment after the federal government withdrew $300 million it had set aside for the electrification of the rail line between Frankston and Baxter and for a Mornington Peninsula freeway overpass at Jetty Road. Both commitments were dependent on matching funds from the Victorian government. This week, the federal government confirmed it would not go ahead with either project. The council has called on the federal member for Dunkley, Peter Murphy, to ensure the investment remains in the peninsula community. Over 160 Southeast CFA volunteers gathered at Crib Point Refinery last week to take part in a group exercise training day to boost their skills ahead of a challenging summer. The volunteers from over 20 brigades across Peninsula and Western Port groups worked through a vegetation fire simulation which saw the crews use over 30 vehicles and roaming aircraft. Southeast Deputy Chief Officer Trevor Owens said the exercise was vital in light of El Niño and a warming planet.
Even the southeast region, just due to that wet weather that we've had over the last 3 years and that sort of warming conditions, abundance of grass everywhere at the moment, and that's really going to present itself if it does dry out, which it likely will as we enter into the sort of the January, February, our peak period. We also know that a lot of our forest areas are quickly drying out as well. We don't need hot days, we only need moderate days with wind, and at the moment we're getting a lot of wind and that will soon dry the fuel out.
Deputy Chief Officer Owen says property owners also have a role to play.
Around your property, it's about making sure that grass is kept down to at least 10 centimetres, and it's also means in and around your property that where you've got shrubs and you've got even the timber, the wood that you've been using for the fire during the winter months, that you're removing that from around the property, any sort of that combustible materials that can get in and around.
The South East Melbourne Health Service Partnership has won a major award at this year's Victorian Public Healthcare Awards. The partnership, which is between Peninsula Health, Monash Health and the Alfred, won the Service Partnership Award for leading the way in building a collaborative model that encompasses acute, primary and community healthcare partners. And it's time to kick off the festive season with Frankston's Christmas Festival of Lights. It's the 25th anniversary and you can celebrate on Davey Street next Saturday, the 25th of November from 5 p.m. There'll be Santa's parade, live music, delicious food and beverage, a Christmas market, thrilling games and rides, and of course the grand tree lighting and fireworks. For the little elves, there'll be free Paw Patrol shows at the Frankston Arts Centre, Christmas arts, crafts and face painting at the Frankston Library, and smaller rides in Rudolph's Family Zone. Full details are on the Frankston Christmas Festival website. After the break, we have the Bendigo Bank monthly market update with David Robertson.
Everyone knows Australia has 4 big banks. But But the fifth biggest retail bank is snapping at their heels. It's a bank that's been around for over 160 years, can be found in over 500 locations nationwide, looks after over 1.8 million customers, and is regularly voted one of the most trusted brands out of all the thousands of brands in Australia. Who is this fantastic number 5? Yep, it's Bendigo Bank. The better big bank.
Established in 1988, Progress Signs has been servicing the local community for 30 years. Located on the Mornington Peninsula, they are the #1 destination for all your signage needs, specialising in a variety of signage from vehicles to shop fronts, occasional and corporate events, short-term, long-term and everything in between. If it's signs you need, be it large or small, Progress Signs is the place to call. Available 24/7 at progress-signs.com.au or call the team on 5975 9188. Thinking signs? Think Progress Signs. A station sponsor.
Battery World now open in Mornington.
We know batteries. We know our 75 D23Ls from our DIN 65 LHs. And we know which is best for you. We have the range and a spark no one else can match because we live and breathe batteries. Those beautiful boxes and cylinders that power our lives and our passions. That's why we're the batteryologists. We're Battery World.
Battery World Shop 1, 43 Mornington Tyre Road, Mornington.
Another RBA rate hike in November as expected, but still a wide range of market opinions for the path ahead. Our latest forecasts for interest rates and their likely impact on the economy. The Cup Day rate increase was well anticipated after the recent CPI data, where core inflation accelerated to 1.2% for the third quarter alone, as well as a range of other factors all pointing to an even slower return to the RBA target. Our view since the July pause in rate hikes has centred both on the likelihood of tighter RBA policy by year-end due to stubbornly higher services inflation, and also the view that rate cuts would more likely be a 2025 event, in contrast to an earlier peak implied by the yield curve. The CPI data added to this likely scenario, as both goods and services prices were firmer than expected, so demand is proving less responsive to higher interest rates than the RBA had hoped. In contrast to other comparable central banks who started their tightening cycles earlier than the RBA and are now on hold, Australia's official cash rate is back on the ascent, although a back-to-back hike in December is most unlikely. The RBA statement announcing the rate hike noted the painful squeeze on household finances and the longer than usual lag in this tightening cycle impacting prices, but remained resolute in dealing with inflation. History shows us how difficult it is to douse the flames of inflation, in particular amid high global energy prices. But history also shows us how damaging rampant inflation is, so the RBA is right to prioritise this imperative. When core inflation is back on target, then rates can fall back to more neutral levels. But one of the challenges at present is tight labour markets. Having a 3.6% unemployment rate is a two-edged sword. Strong demand for labour is supporting the cost of living crisis. However, the unique nature of the post-pandemic economy means our more resilient jobs market makes the RBA's job of dealing with inflation even more challenging. Other countries have started to see the tightness in their labour markets recede, and we do still expect the unemployment rate here to steadily rise, but it hasn't so far. The RBA Statement of Monetary Policy out later this week will show their latest forecasts for jobs, inflation and economic growth, and none of these are likely to indicate anything but a tightening bias for all of 2024. Another challenge for the RBA in trying to achieve a better balance between constrained supply and excess demand is the strength in household spending, despite the extent of rate hikes so far. The September retail sales data showed that household spending was up 5% year on year, and while that growth rate was over 9% for non-discretionary items, even discretionary spending was slightly higher than a year ago. Non-discretionary spending was sharply higher for transport, healthcare and food. but there are also increases for discretionary items such as recreation, cafes and accommodation. One of the questions for the RBA is the degree to which households are becoming accustomed to price increases and so are motivated to buy in advance of higher costs ahead. In other words, inflation expectations. In summary, while not expecting another rate hike next month, the risk of another increase in February or May after the next quarterly CPI releases is material. And while economic growth and the jobs market have remained resilient, it's important to be realistic about the timing of any interest rate relief and to budget accordingly. Fortunately, while the domestic economy slows, offshore demand is holding up well, and the prospect of more trade tariffs being lifted is a welcome outcome. And that's the market update from Bendigo Bank.
And now it's time for Bianca for this week's weather.
Hello, it's Bianca after a break with this week's RPP weather update. Well, the weather over the last few days has almost been a bit overcast with some rain, while the rest of the country has been experiencing a bit of a heat wave. With summer starting officially in a couple of weeks, let's take a deep dive into what this week has in store for us. Today, Sunday the 19th of November, should bring us a mostly sunny day. We are looking at a low of 9 and a high of 21. Monday brings us a partly cloudy day. We should feel a low of 11 and a high of 20. Tuesday sees the rain returning across the peninsula. We can expect a low of 11 and a high of 19. Wednesday sees an overcast day with a low of 11 and a high of 20. Thursday also brings us clouds. We should see a low of 11 and a high of 21. Friday sees the sun popping its head out from behind the clouds, bringing us a warmer day where we will feel a low of 12 and a high of 21. And finally, Saturday sees this trend continue with a low of 12 and a high of 20. Well, that's all for this week. Try to enjoy the sun while you can, and I will be back again next week with another RPP weather update.
Now to our surf guru Muzz with the Surf Report.
Hi, it's Muzz and I'm back with this week's Peninsula Surf Report. Did have some swell this week, but like the conditions you can see on the shoulder, this is about as good as it's been. So it's been south-southwest pretty much every day, and the whole next week looks about the same. Swell's going to hang in about the same, drop off I think maybe a little bit on Sunday and then come back up a bit on Monday again, but the conditions are pretty ordinary at best. So temperature's only going to be 20, and around about that 18 to 20 degrees, which leading into summer is not a lot. And we will have the old mate gate's going to be open, so all your old mates are going to be down here, so they'll be paddling inside here and doing all that stuff, because they're going to be surfing 2-foot onshore horrible Western Port Bay, or 6-foot double up beach breaks if you're lucky enough that can still do that sort of stuff. But yeah, the week in front, nothing special. You'll get wet if you're desperate, but as long as your standards aren't high, you'll get a good surf. If your standards are high, you're probably not going to surf. All right, so hopefully I have a better report for you next week, and I'll see you then. Bye.
And that's all from our team here at RPP News, serving the community with stories that matter to you. Keep watching and do tell your friends. We're going out with a look at the Mornington Pop Choir that went viral on TikTok this week with over 10 million views of their cover of Radiohead's Creep. Bringing the news from coast to coast across Frankston and the Mornington Peninsula, I'm Catie Sharp. See you for the next edition.